My name is Danya, and I am the founder and the lead facilitator of Wild Song Yoga School. I began practicing yoga at the age of 15, 16 in my early teens, and took my very first yoga teacher training back in 2013. So I've been practicing yoga now for about 15 years and teaching for 12. Everything I offer is rooted in earth-based wisdom. I practice and have studied a lot of different lineages, the Vedas, Buddhism, a few different indigenous lineages of North America. But then my own ancestry is Slavic, so I've been digging deep into those roots, and Celtic. The teacher trainings and every other course that I offer is guided by the 4 elements. We always start with earth, with the physical body, then going into water, the mental emotional realm, then into air, the subtle realm, the energetic body, and then ending with fire, which is like that spirit and that chance to rebirth ourselves and transform ourselves like the phoenix rising from the ashes. I really tried to bring in different philosophies as well. You know, we talked about Vedanta, we talked about Samkhya, we talked about Tantra, which are all very particular to the yoga lineage, but then we also brought in some other lineages to inspire people to really find their own way. And maybe that is a certain lineage that speaks to them, but maybe it's also creating. You know, one of my favorite quotes, which I shared with all of you, is yoga is creation. And that was said by Deskachar, Krishnamacharya's son. One thing that I think is really important for yoga teachers is to learn about the roots. I think that as yoga teachers, no matter what style of yoga it is that you want to teach, understanding the history, understanding the culture that it came from, really understanding the philosophy that has inspired and shaped what we are practicing today is super important for that idea of paying homage and reverence to the lineage. And so that's something that I have taken upon myself to go to India, go to Nepal, be absorbed in that culture, simmer in that culture, and of course there's always more opportunity to do that. Studying with other people who are looked at as deep wisdom keepers of this lineage, and really understand it from the roots as much as I can, because yoga it's such an ancient practice, right? As far as we know, it's about 5,000 years old, but it could be way older than that. And it's such a rich, again, tapestry of what was the foundation for what we are experiencing now. And what we experience now is so different than what yoga was in the past, right? As we talked about in class, yoga in the past, in ancient times, it was yoga for enlightenment. It was yoga for moksha or mukti, right? To transcend the physical human body. Except for nowadays in our modern world, most people come to yoga for well-being. The practice of yoga in studios or in our modern culture has been really watered down because people are just looking at this practice to feel better. And that's not wrong. I'm not saying that that's a bad reason to be coming to yoga at all. What I, invite my students to explore though is, okay, if that is our intention, how can we still pay reverence to the roots? Even though maybe some of the wording or some of the practices aren't what we will be incorporating into our daily routine, how can we still acknowledge them and appreciate them for what they are? And maybe take the pieces that really fit into our paradigm to support our path. So even with earth-based wisdom, as we bring that into this program, I do bring in practices from different cultures, and I acknowledge the cultures and even the specific people who help pass those practices on to me. And that's another quote from Deskachar, is to share what you've learned, to not just keep it for yourself, right? And so as this knowledge is coming to me, as this wisdom is coming to me, how do I share it in a way that's digestible for students that is still paying that reverence to the lineage? And no matter which spiritual elder that you talk to, or wisdom keeper that you talk to, or shaman, if you want to use that word, that you talk to, they all say that our spiritual practice needs to begin with gratitude. And so for myself, the way to find that gratitude for yoga is coming back to my why and being deeply rooted in that orientation for my path as I move forward. In Sanskrit, there's that term sankalpa, and sankalpa means our heart's deepest desire, that seed that's deeply planted in our heart that we want to bloom and we want to bring forth in this world through our own essence. But what originally brought me to yoga is quite a bit different than what has urged me to stay with yoga. I was experiencing these mental health imbalances, I was experiencing these physical imbalances, and I was also a young teenage girl. And I totally started doing yoga, not because I was like, oh, this is gonna help my depression or, you know, whatever it was I was experiencing, addiction and all the things. I totally started yoga because I was like, yoga's gonna make me skinny and hot. That's so not where I'm at anymore. But also like being really honest about that beginning step, I think has really broken down the barriers for me to connect with other students who also come to yoga for similar reasons. Because a lot of the time, the reason why we're called to yoga is very much like a physical reason. I remember my very first Shavasana, and it just like blew my mind. To this day, I explain it as I felt like I was floating in the black abyss. I wasn't a body, I wasn't a mind. I was just like allowed to be. And that is the exact reason why I have stayed committed to yoga, is because instead of being a doer, I was allowed to just be. Through that process of just being, I've started to realize that yoga really is a path of self-love, right? We describe yoga as like, oh, you know, the definition of yoga is union or connection or to yoke. Right? But when we look at it like full-heartedly and with that kind of broader perspective, how do we connect? Well, it's through love. Well, for myself, this journey of like noticing that inner stillness, it really has, again, broken down those barriers for me to peel back those layers. You know, I felt like I had like this massive wall against my heart, and I still feel like I'm just like slowly chipping away at it. It's so brilliant when you experience that inner light and that inner warmth and that inner spaciousness. And then it's so brilliant when you notice that like, that's everywhere. That we're not just the only ones carrying that, but like everyone around us is carrying that. The plants are carrying that. The animal nation is carrying that, right? And that is where this earth-based wisdom starts to come through, is like recognizing that connection of that unifying force of spaciousness and of love. It's just so beautiful to witness other people's unfolding. When we first arrived here and people are first walking in the door, most people are like quite shy and they like kind of have like, their hearts are a little hidden, right? But then by the end of it, we're all like crying in each other's arms and sweating and praying together, you know? And it's just like, the heart just starts to explode open. To be in a space where I can be reminded often of the power of this practice helps to ignite my tapas, my dedication, my discipline to studying, to understanding, to practicing this, and to studying myself. Thank you so much for being here with me and for opening yourself to the possibilities and for trusting in me and in yoga. And no matter if you practice with me or anybody else, the world needs more yogis. So please just stay committed and dedicated to your practice. From my heart to every one of yours, namaste.